Man, the number one complaint I hear is I hate having a budget. But if you want to be wealthy, you need to get over this. Stay tuned and find out why. Well, if you're still here, my name is Frank Thomas, and yeah, I'm not trying to be presumptuous or anything, but if you're still here, my name is Frank Thomas from Wealth Generation Secrets, and today we're going to be talking about budgets. I promise you I'll try to make it as least painful as physically possible because I believe a budget should be painless. You also need to know that having a budget is crucial. It is one of the most crucial things that you can do. There's an old saying, what you don't measure, you don't know. This is really important, especially with weight loss. If you don't get on that scale every day, you don't know if you're eating too much food or too little or what. Eventually your pants get tight, but by the time that happens, you've already picked up an extra 20 pounds. I know, I'm guilty of it, so just so you know. But a budget is exactly the same thing. You have to consider your budget your bathroom scale for your money. Now, the budget is super important, and we don't want to make it a difficult process. I have seen some very difficult programs that have come out, like Microsoft Money and that. They try to make it simple, but they overcomplicate the whole darn thing. I remember there was a time that I had somebody who was really struggling to make a budget. I mean, really struggling, and they were not really Excel. They couldn't really use a program like Excel. So you know what I did to make it as simple as possible is I had them build a Google Calendar in Google Docs, and in the calendar I had them put all the days where they had to pay something like their rent or their cell phone or their car payment or whatever it is. And what I did was I said, okay, let's look at your previous payday and let's put your paydays and what you actually earn every payday. If your earnings alter every payday, then you put a guesstimate, a close number of what it should be. Now, what you want to do is you want to take what you got coming in and take away all the expenses that you find that occur before the next payday. If it's more than what you're getting paid, for example, at the beginning of the month, if you're renting or you're paying for a mortgage, that's a pretty big payment, and that could gobble up a huge amount of your paycheck or all your paycheck, for crying out loud, if it's on one paycheck. So split it across paychecks. So this will let you look ahead of time and say, oh, I need to make sure that I've got this covered here, like my rent's $1,500 a month, so I got $750 here and $750 here, just as an example. But even so, another easy way to do it is to use Google Docs. I love Google Docs because of this. Google Docs is one of those things that if you set up the account properly and you got a good password, you can keep your records in there for years. I've got over 10 years of my budget sitting in Google Docs, and I love it because I can look forward and I can look back too to see how much things were costing me before and how much they're costing me now. And I can also forecast into the future, and I find that to be very helpful. Get it written down. Now, when you're building your budget, you want to make sure that you estimate what all your bills are throughout the month. I find that building a budget based upon your pay frequency is the easiest, but sometimes you still have to do it by the month because you'll have bills coming out on a monthly basis. I find that the easiest way for me is on a monthly basis. So I'll have January to December and make a tab a year. Now what I'll do is at the top I'll put all my expenses. I'll list all my expenses for the month. Rent, $1,500. Cell bill, $120. Insurance, $300. You get the point. And one of my line items is my fun money. I'll actually allocate, let's say $300 or $400 or $500 fun money in that month, and it's allocated into my budget. Now what I do is once I get all my expenses, I do a sum and I can see how much that monthly expenses is. And let's say my monthly expenses are $6,000, okay? Just as a for say, let's say 5,000 to make it really even. Now what I'm gonna do then is I'm gonna put in below that, how much am I making in that month? If I'm getting paid bi-weekly, I could have 3 paychecks in that month, but I could only have 2. But I know for sure within that year, I'm going to have 2 months where I've got an extra paycheck. So I might have 3 paychecks in 2 months within that year. But let's make it simple. Let's say every pay period I get paid $3,000. So every pay period, now if I have 2 pay periods in a month, that adds up to $6,000. And this is your net. This is after you paid your taxes. This is what you get from your paycheck. So immediately you can add another line below it and say, okay, this is what I got left over. I've got $5,000 in expenses and I have $6,000 income. I have $1,000 left over. Now, if you are smart, you'll create a line item in your budget as an expense and call it my emergency fund and possibly long-term savings. Make them separate items. Now, in your emergency fund, you might tack away $100 or a couple $100 so you can build up your emergency fund. I got lots of videos talking about emergency funds. Do check them out. But the second one is long-term savings. This is where the whole concept of paying yourself first comes from. Make it an expense that you just pay right away at the beginning of the month so that money does not get spent. Now, I'd also recommend that if you're saving up and you want to go to, let's say, Hawaii or something like that, make it a line item and plan in advance for it. Boy, what a difference it makes. I took the whole family to South Africa. We went for almost a whole month a year ago, and it was fantastic. And I came back, I think I owed maybe $600 on my credit card, which I paid off right away. But what we did was we knew we were going to do this. We knew we had all these expenses. We built a budget on how expensive our trip was going to be, and we tacked a bit more on for fun. And at the end of the day, we did spend a little more than what we thought we'd spend, but we'd already covered all those expenses. Everything was already paid for, and I didn't come back to a wonderful MasterCard bill, which would really suck because I know I've done that in the past. And I'm sure 1 or 2 of you have done that too. But, you know, you want to do that, and it makes it easy. Now, that's the reason why you want to have a budget. A budget just really kind of keeps you honest. You can see the numbers, and it allows you to keep on top of things. Just like if you jumped on the bathroom scale after 3 months and you haven't weighed yourself and you discovered you picked up 20 pounds, you will find in your in your expenses, what'll happen is you'll pick up an extra 20,000 in debt or something like that. And you don't want to do that. You want to stay ahead of this stuff. If you have credit cards to pay off, or if you've got debt to pay off, those become line items too, by the way. Don't forget that. But before we get to our bonus, and you will want to hear about this bonus. So if you're getting value from this video, please like it, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and if you have any questions or comments, do leave a question or comment. But let's get into our bonus because this is a good bonus. One thing you can do with your budget, and I alluded to it a bit in the video, and that's called forecasting. Oh my goodness. What you can do is build a budget going forward in time. I've actually built a budget that spans the next 5 years. Now, you could say to me, well, Frank, how do you know how much you're going to make in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years? It doesn't matter. What matters is I can alter the budget as I move forward if I make more, because I'm always trying to make more, to be perfectly honest with you. But what I can do is I can, in my budget, put an item that shows me my current investment and my emergency fund balances. That way I can forecast into the future and see how much I've saved at that point in time. So you can make your budget as complicated or as simple as you want to. It's up to you. But as time goes on, learning how to forecast into the future, and the simplest forecast could be something like you just take a snapshot of a page in Google Docs and you make a copy of it and you call it the next year, like 2024 or 2025, whatever it is. You make that your forecast into the future and use the same numbers you're using in the last month of the year before. So that way, it'll be an up-to-date budget based upon what you have for figures right now. Also, keep a running tally of what your investment accounts are doing. It's actually kind of exciting to see it kind of go up. For me, it's actually very fundamentally important because I'd like to retire in the next 5 years. If I want to do that, I need to know how much I'm saving, and forecasting gives me a pretty good idea based upon how much I save on a monthly basis, what I'll have when I'm ready to retire. Now, just doing that has allowed me to go in and see what happens if I save $1,000 a month. But now, with some of the work I'm doing, I'm saving up to $5,000 a month. What difference does that make over 5 years? You would think, well, it's got to make a big difference. Well, it does. Not as much as I'd hoped, but it does. But it increased my overall savings value over 5 years by almost $200,000. So learn how to forecast. And like I said, forecasting is easy. You can literally take a snapshot of the year you're in and move it forward, and just keep doing that. And you can, figure it out. Tie the sheets together so you can see your balances moving forward in time, so you can get a really good idea where you're going to be sitting. What happens if I take, let's say you got a $10,000 bonus, and you take it and you put it right away into your long-term retirement accounts? What does that look like in 25 years? If you have a longer window, this is really interesting, because all of a sudden you can see if I'm getting a return of, let's say, 10%, every 7 and change years, that 10,000 is going to double to 20,000. And in 14 and change years, let's say 14 and a half years, it's going to become worth 40,000. And in 21 and change years, or almost 22 years, it's going to be worth 80,000. And you can see it tangibly. If you had a 21-year or 22-year window in your forecasting, you can tangibly see what that 10 is going to turn into in the future. And you're going to be like, I'm not going to spend this 10 grand. No stinking way. I'm not going to give the government half of it and then save the other half or go spend it on something. I'm going to put most of it into my long-term savings, because man, that's going to be worth like 40 or 80 or whatever $1,000 in the future. Wow. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I've got another really great video, and it's all talking about your job, okay? And it's one you should watch, because it's one that's going to talk to you about getting as much from your job financially as you can. Go take a look at it, and we'll talk to you there. Bye-bye.